Welcome to Project HeadCanon. This is the 7th video of the Content Crosshair series, wherein I take a look at one, or in this case a few pieces of Star Wars media, to figure out what I should keep in the project. In the last video, we looked at the video game called Star Wars, released in 1987 for the NES. In this video, we're looking at all of the other NES and SNES games that follow the events of the original trilogy films. There are 5 games in total. For the NES, there are Star Wars and The Empire Strikes Back, both released in 1991, and for the SNES, there are Super Star Wars, The Empire Strikes Back, and Super Star Wars Return of the Jedi. In principle, I think they're all similar enough that it's worth squeezing them into a single video. As with the last one, I haven't played all the way through these games, and will instead be relying on full playthrough videos I found on YouTube. These games all loosely follow the events of various original trilogy films. In the interest of not repeating myself too much, I'm going to go through game by game, and just highlight the differences between the plot of the game and the plot of the associated film. This game starts with Luke and C-3PO trying to find R2-D2 on Tatooine. Luke battles and platforms his way through some caves and a Jawa sandcrawler to reach R2. Then he goes through some more caves to reach Obi-Wan, and even more caves to reach Han in the Mos Eisley Cantina. The crew battles their way to the Millennium Falcon and escapes. The Death Star rescue plays out pretty much the same as the film, albeit with quite a bit more shooting and jumping across things. The Battle of Yavin happens, and Luke destroys the Death Star to win the game. This game just follows Luke, so we don't see the asteroid chase or much of Cloud City. Luke starts out by battling and platforming his way through an icy cave on Hoth, eventually destroying the Imperial probe droid that spotted the Rebel base. He then takes part in the Battle of Hoth, goes back into Echo Base where he hijacks an AT-ST, and then leaves the planet. On Dagobah, he does some more platforming and fighting to reach Yoda, and then even more to train as a Jedi. Eventually, he leaves for Cloud City. There, he fights his way past more Imperials until his climactic confrontation with Darth Vader, which he somehow wins, and that's the end of the game. Luke battles his way through the Dune Sea, and kills some sort of Sarlacc-like creature to find C-3PO. Then he battles his way into the Jawa sandcrawler to rescue R2-D2, and kills a Jawenko lava beast. Then he battles his way across the Jundland Wastes to reach Obi-Wan, and kills a mutant Womp Rat. Then he battles his way across Mos Eisley and into the Cantina, where he massacres all of the patrons, including a Kalhar. Han Solo then battles his way across more of Mos Eisley to reach the Millennium Falcon. On the Death Star, Chewie, Han, and Luke battle their way through different parts of the station to rescue Princess Leia and eventually escape. Finally, Luke destroys the Death Star to win the game. Luke battles his way across Hoth, into a cave where he kills a giant Wampa-like creature, and then back out, where he destroys some Imperial probe droids. As the Battle of Hoth begins, Luke battles his way through Echo Base to reach his snowspeeder. During the fighting, he climbs inside an AT-AT and battles his way through it, eventually climbing back out and destroying its cockpit. Han battles his way through Echo Base as the Empire invades it, destroying this dropship-looking thingy and an AT-ST in the process. There's the asteroid chase, and then Luke battles his way through the swamps of Dagobah, eventually killing this thing. Han and Chewie battle their way through Cloud City, and Chewie shoots down the Slave One, presumably with Han's frozen body inside it. Luke shows up and battles his way through Cloud City to reach Darth Vader. They fight, the rebels escape, and the game ends. Luke, Chewie, or Leia, you can choose which one, battles their way into and through Jabba's palace to rescue Han. One of the 2 remaining characters battles their way through more of Jabba's palace and kills Bubba-Wakula-R, which is kinda sad. One of Luke, Han, and Chewie battles his way through the Rancor pit and kills the Rancor. The Battle of the Great Pit of Carkoon happens and Jabba is killed. On Endor, either Luke or Leia takes part in the speeder chase, and then Wicket battles his way through Bright Tree Village. Luke battles his way onto what appears to be the Imperial landing platform. One of Han, Leia, and Chewie battles their way into the shield generator bunker and destroys it. Luke battles his way through the Death Star 2 to reach the throne room, he defeats Vader, and then the Emperor single-handedly, and the game ends. These games are all 2D action-oriented platformers made for the NES and SNES. As such, if you compare the games to the films, there is a lot of extra action sequences and a lot of jumping across gaps and over obstacles that just didn't exist in the films. Pretty much all of these changes were made for 2 reasons: technical constraints of the NES and SNES systems, and to make the gameplay longer and more enjoyable. The former explains a lot of the repetitive art assets and level design, and the latter explains why there are so many random enemies and bosses that clearly didn't exist in the films. Overall, the vibe I got from these games kind of resembles that of the LEGO Star Wars games. They're definitely Star Wars, but the low fidelity, focus on gameplay, and looser adherence to the plot makes them feel kind of zany. The difference is that the LEGO games did so intentionally, and it doesn't feel like these games did. If anything, being more than a decade younger allowed the LEGO games to match the films quite a bit better than these games ever could. I do find it kind of interesting that all of the games that follow the story of Episode 4, including the 1987 one from the last video, involve Luke having to locate and rescue R2-D2 from the Jawa sandcrawler himself. The LEGO games did something very similar to this, though they started their Episode 4 story with a level on the Tantive 4. I can think of a bunch of reasons why to do this, including pacing, diversifying level designs and enemy types, and giving the player more narrative agency. But for all of those games to make the exact same change to the story seems kind of eerie in a way. What's wrong with starting on the Tantive 4 like the LEGO games did, or playing as the droids, for example? Perhaps I'm a bit spoiled by modern games that weave their storytelling and gameplay together more smoothly without really worrying about the performance costs of narrative decisions. But I think a bigger reason is just the difference between a film and a video game. It's very hard, I dare say impossible, to adapt a Star Wars film into a video game without either making some major story concessions or just a terrible game. This is a notion that I will probably be revisiting many times in the future of this series. I think the comparison between these games and the LEGO Star Wars games is pretty apt. Both turned the original trilogy films into a fun gameplay experience. For various reasons though, these games have to change the plots of the original trilogy films more to do so. But for some reason in the pre-Disney continuity, these games were considered somewhat canon, while the LEGO games were considered completely non-canon. So if we're treating canonicity as a one-dimensional sliding scale, and these games are further from the canonical films than a piece of media that's already non-canon, then logically it follows that these games must also be non-canon. With that said, I hereby declare the video games Star Wars: The Empire Strikes Back, Super Star Wars: The Empire Strikes Back, and Super Star Wars: Return of the Jedi to be entirely non-canon within the scope of this project. These cuts were numerous but pretty easy to do. There wasn't really any gray area in between content that only appeared in these games and content that also appeared in the original trilogy films. So all I had to do was delete the former and delete the appearances section entries from the latter. There are a few reference materials associated with the games, including an article from the Nintendo Power magazine, the strategy guides Super Star Wars Official Game Secrets, Super Empire Strikes Back Official Game Secrets, the Super Return of the Jedi Official Player's Guide, and the Star Wars Hint Book. They don't contribute any content to the wiki, so all I ended up doing was deleting all of their entries in these sources sections. So that takes care of that. I don't think any of this was particularly surprising to anyone. In short, I don't mind changing a narrative to suit gameplay. It's just that in this project where we're trying to be super rigorous about everything, we're kind of forced to pick one or the other, and I think it's a pretty uncontroversial choice to go with the original trilogy films here. Now I'm honestly pretty bored of rehashing the original trilogy all the time. For the next video, let's pivot to something completely different, and maybe a bit more playful. Until then, may the Force be with you.